What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
The operations section, needless to say, operated the airship. At least 50 people were required to keep a ship aloft, but if the fleet wanted to operate at full strength, not even 100 were quite enough. The defense section was in charge of the airship's defense barriers, which came in various flavors: anti-physical, anti-magic, anti-attribute, and so on. An airship's outer walls weren't particularly thick, a weight-saving measure, so if they neglected to protect themselves with magic, they'd be shot down in a flash. No crew would dream of flying without a defensive staff. Finally, the attack division was the most important one. Each airship was equipped with magic amplifier cannons that made it easier for magicians to work together. Multiple magicians would focus their power on a magic ball placed on top of a pedestal. By casting on it at the same time, they could trigger large-scale magic much easier than usual. One cannon was in the front of the ship, and 2 were on the sides. There were a total of 5 per ship, with up to 10 magicians per cannon awaiting orders and backups standing by to keep up the magical barrage. It's worth noting that a magic amplifier cannon's power increased in direct proportion to the number of people using it. If 2 people were on it at once, the resulting magic force doubled. If a full complement of 10 magicians worked together, it increased 20-fold. This was a serious threat. Even simple fire magic could become more powerful than a full-fledged fireball. It went without saying just how incredible this invention was. The airship's defenses were perfect. The fireballs spat out by the wyverns were no threat at all. Their barrier even prevented damage from ramming the walls. No half-hearted attack had a chance of working, and that kept Faraga satisfied. And we haven't even gotten to their offense.
Our airships are the strongest there are,
proclaimed Faraga.
And it's time to show their true power. Give me maximum force, and let's knock those annoying lizards out of the sky.
Up until then, only 2 or 3 magicians had been casting spells at once. But they had done enough testing. It was time to go on stage. A spell controller, an orb nearly 20 inches wide and made of purified magic stone, was perched atop every magic amplifier cannon. Channeling magic power into it would activate the device. The magicians, sitting quietly until then, lifted up their hands, and on a signal, all 10 unleashed large-scale force. Lightning, icy snow, flames, vorpal blades, and all kinds of other terrifying magic blasted through the sky, amplified 20 times their average strength, and all its fury was focused on Gabble and Team Hirayu. I had been watching the battle unfold with rapt attention, but now I couldn't help but leap out of my chair. Gopta's forces were being blown away by the impacts of the tank shells. Gabbles were falling out of the sky, mercilessly exposed to all-powerful magic. Things were intensifying fast out there, and we were starting to take casualties. I had expected that, of course. I did, but maybe I was still too optimistic, deep down. Benimaru seemed so incredibly confident, and Raphael didn't say anything, so I naively thought there wouldn't be any problems. But that wasn't the reality. Of course it wasn't. We were waging war, after all. There was no way we could win without taking any damage at all. Now my lack of foresight made me feel angry and impatient. But Benimaru remained as cool as ever.
Please, Sir Rimuru, take your seat. This was within our expectations, and there are no problems to speak of.
His words made something blow up inside me.
What? We're taking casualties out there. Shouldn't I have used Megiddo to help you guys out?
No. I'd already come to a conclusion about this. Megiddo was affected, yes, but I had already decided it was pretty pointless. Benimaru questioned its effectiveness as well, and even Diablo was negative about it. Apparently there were several reasons for this. First of all, since we had started this whole thing as a nation, we couldn't always rely on our master, the Demon Lord, that is, me, to be there for us. The Demon Lord was responsible for protecting the monsters under his command, Benimaru asserted, but it was the duty of his subordinates to protect the country. The rest of my staff agreed. If they did not feel that Tempest was their country, and they had to protect it with their own hands, they had no right to live here.
You don't have to take on everything, Sir Rimuru.
As Shuna put it. I was glad to hear that, and for that matter, I agreed with it. So that was one reason. The second was that Megiddo had a weakness, one Diablo pointed out to me.
This Megiddo is quite a beautiful magic. It provides high power at low cost, it's versatile, and it can be applied in a variety of situations. But once you are familiar with it, you can counter it in so many ways.
I could have launched it from here in the control center, and if I did, I'm sure it'd be pretty damn useful, too. But once my trick was exposed, it'd never work a second time. As Hinata had told me, all they'd have to do is conjure up some wind and create a dust cloud or a smokescreen, and its accuracy and power would be lethally compromised. I was pretty surprised that Diablo asked Hinata for her feedback. What an information gatherer he was. But enough about that. Last time I took out Megiddo, I killed every single one of our enemies. The survivors, namely, Edmaris and Raisin, weren't going to blab about it, so there was no worrying about information leaks. That definitely wouldn't be the case this time. There was no way we could keep the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Imperial soldiers and officers quiet.
A trump card is best always kept safe for the last moment,
advised Benimaru. Magic that has such an awesome effect at first blush was best not used carelessly, he thought, and Diablo was with him on that. They were pretty convincing. Megiddo is a super high temperature heat ray created by concentrating sunlight to extreme levels, and it's almost impossible to avoid once sighted. As an anti-personnel magic, it's only really an option when used at the right moment. Meanwhile, our opponents here weren't really flesh and blood. They were tanks, hulking piles of iron. I'm not saying that Megiddo wouldn't work, but I don't think it'd be too effective. Raphael calculated that it'd take a long time for that magic to destroy the tanks. To penetrate one, I'd have to increase the power, in other words, the focal temperature of the heat ray, up to tens of thousands of degrees. And since these tanks aren't powered by oil or gasoline or the like, I couldn't count on it bursting into flames for me. If a penetrating heat ray didn't stop a tank, I'd have to plug it full of holes until it finally stopped moving, and at that point, it'd be a lot easier to blow it away with nuclear magic instead. But doing that meant having to break through layer upon layer of anti-magic barriers, and you'd have to kill off the magicians behind them first, which leads to this long, drawn-out magic battle. Tactically, it made no sense. It wasn't going to work. So since I'd given command over to Benimaru, my job was honestly just to watch over things. That was all, really, but
I should go out, and
I was about to say that, but I was interrupted in the middle of my statement.
You can't. As the commander, I cannot put our leader in danger. Above all, I am concerned with the story the hero Chloe told us. In another timeline, someone out there managed to murder you, Sir Rimuru. Asking you to fight out there while knowing such a dangerous person may exist, it's simply impossible.
I had shared the story of this potentially lethal foe with all my officers, framing it as a potential what-if coming for us. What did they think about it? The answer was obvious from the look on Benimaru's face.
Currently, I would consider as a threat the commanders of the Empire's 3 divisions, along with the 100 members of the Imperial Guardians serving under the Emperor. There might be other hidden figures as well, and we are investigating any potential leads. Please forgive us if this sounds weak-spirited.
It was Soe who gave me that report. He and his team were currently risking their lives to gather information, all for my sake, to eliminate this potential threat to me.
With the enemy's strength unknown, it is out of the question to send you, our lord, to the front lines. The operation is underway without any problems. Please, I ask you to trust in me, Gobta, Gabble, and all who serve them.
At his bidding, I sat down in my chair. I still had this unpleasant feeling in my chest, not quite annoyance, not quite frustration. But Benimaru's words were simply too true. He was right. If you thought about it, from the very beginning, Benimaru had been thinking about me as he carried out his plans. And not just him, Shion, too, standing behind me, and Soe by my side. Diablo went without saying, but even Shuna, looking at me all worried. They all prepared for the reality that anyone who went to battle would have to face sacrifice. Likely, that was true for everyone on the front lines, too. They were standing out there, ready to use themselves as bait to catch a threat they didn't even have a visual picture of yet. And even the incredibly self-indulgent Veldora was sitting quietly in the control center, ready to protect me if push came to shove. It was all for the sake of protecting me, the king of this nation. The only person who hadn't resolved himself to it was me, right then. And that is why I have to be perfect. I thought I heard a voice from somewhere. Great. Are you worried about me, too? Well, I'm fine now. It'd be disrespectful to be so sad while all these people are so resolved. It's time for me to join them.
sorry. I lost some of my cool.
Benimaru nodded at me.
Don't worry, Sir Rimuru. Victory will most assuredly be yours.
He flashed me a fearless smile as he made the promise. He was a commander responsible for the lives of his soldiers, and his face was serious to match. And hearing that, I felt the irritation, the conflict, and all those other unpleasant feelings disappear. I had long prepared for my own death, and for killing my enemies, but I tried to avoid thinking much about the concept of people dying for me. I needed to accept that. I needed to accept that it wasn't only for my sake, but for those of their families, the framework of the nation that guarded and defended them, and the fact that I was here to symbolize all that. For these very reasons, I could never allow them to be defeated. As a symbol, I needed to act the part, I needed to put in a suitable performance. Realizing this, I resolved to begin by giving Benimaru the relaxed response he hoped for.
Of course. I want you to tell everyone what I'm going to say, alright?
By all means.
With Benimaru's consent and cooperation, I was going to transmit my will to each and every one of my people. Thanks to the unique skill-born leader, they'd receive my statement in their minds.
Listen to me. Crush the enemy with all your might. There's no need to go easy on them, and of course there is no need to show mercy. Use everything you've got to eliminate the enemy as quickly as possible.
I tried my best to put my entire heart into it. Benimaru nodded his approval, the other officers smiling as well, because to them, the order meant one thing: the full release of the power kept under control. Correctly understanding the meaning of my words, the monsters resumed their assignments. And thanks to that, the battlefield was about to drastically change.
Volume 13, Chapter 2. The Assault Begins. Part 1.
All the monsters on the battlefield accepted the words of their lord and ally Rimuru with their souls, the words of an absolute ruler who accepted all their loyalty and trust. Then another voice commanded them.
The disguise operation is cancelled. Crush the fools bothering Sir Rimuru's mind until nothing remains of them.
With this, there was nothing left to bind the monsters. Joy filled their hearts, and they relied upon pure impulse to unleash their magic force. The demonic auras they had suppressed so as not to affect the town they lived in were now fully released, and the concentration of magicules around them shot upward. There was nothing to be afraid of anymore as they let their deepest impulses drive them across the battlefield. Datta, too, heard the order as the shells kept raining down.
Finally, but it doesn't look like we've achieved our goals yet. Is that okay?
He was talking to himself, but his second-in-command, Gobchi, responded.
Well, what's the problem? The plan was to persevere and make the opponent show off all their latent force, but at this rate, we're going to dwindle down to nothing. We have to scare them a little, or nobody strong's going to come out for us.
That's how it is.
That's how it is.
Datta and Gobchi were having this conversation in the middle of a battlefield, bombarded by shells and shockwaves. Those watching were impressed by their ability to hear, although they were well used to their supremely relaxed attitudes by now.
If it were us, the strongest guys would jump out first, but...
Well, put it that way, Datta, and aren't you one of the big four?
Hey, alright, maybe, but I'm still the weakest of them. Seriously, stop bringing that up.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai supporters: Teddy, Marvin Emmerich, Juice, Alex Gomez, Mario June Baagen, Jacob, John Wong, Judah Herrera, Mario, Kel. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.